The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
50 years ago today, the Thrilla in Manila, the third of the Ali Frazier trilogy. And if it wasn't the greatest fight of all time, it may have been the most brutal. And the fight where Ali later said he felt closest to death. We will relive that incredible fight and that incredible period for boxing 50 years ago when boxing was right up there. You know what the NFL is now? Well, boxing was pretty close to that back in the day, and we'll look back on that. Nationals have their president of baseball operations. We'll see if he can turn the page on what has been a brutal 6 years since they won the World Series, 5 last-place finishes, and another brutal season this year. But maybe things will get better. We'll look at that and other things that are going on, including this huge fight that is underway in the WNBA, which could lead to a lockout. We'll see. There's some really ugly stuff being exchanged, and we'll get to that shortly. The Nationals have made it official. In fact, they're holding a news conference right now to announce that Paul Taboni is the president of baseball operations. They put out a press release about an hour ago to say that. The interesting thing to me in the release, they did have a quote from Taboni, which I'll read here in a minute. But in addition to a quote from Mark Lerner, who is basically running the show since his father passed away. There are also quotes from the brothers-in-law, Edward Cohen and Robert Tannenbaum. Mark Lerner has 2 sisters, and those are their husbands. And usually in a press release, you'll see one quote from the owner. These are 3 different quotes. You've heard a lot of different things about they don't really know who's running the show with that team. There's a very good column by Barry Zerluga a week or 2 ago about how decisions are made as a family where they sometimes include the grandsons. So maybe this is an indication of how things are going. But Taboni was in a very good spot with the Red Sox, assistant GM. He could have stayed on, become general manager there, maybe gone to other teams. So he must have seen something here that he liked. He's 35 years old, and that's the way things work now in baseball with these analytics guys. Now, he's not full nerd. He did actually play college baseball. He played at Cal and worked his way through the organization of the Red Sox after getting his degree at Cal. He's got a master's in business administration from Notre Dame and a specialization in finance and analytics. So he does have the modern pedigree that you like, but he's more than just a guy who crunches numbers. So that's a good thing. He said in this release, he said, I'd like to thank the Lerner, Cohen, and Tannenbaum families. See, that also tells you something there, that there are a lot of cooks in the kitchen here, which may not be the best thing. Again, saying, I'd like to thank the Lerner, Cohen, and Tannenbaum families for trusting me with this tremendous opportunity. I'm grateful to have their support in executing a vision for the organization that is focused on identifying, acquiring, and developing the best talent in the sport. The Washington Nationals are a proud franchise with passionate fans in one of the best cities in the world, and I'm honored to lead the baseball operations department as we work towards becoming the highest performing organization in baseball. Here. Let's see what happens as things unfold. But it's now official. Paul Taboni is the president of baseball operations for the Nationals. Before I get to this WNBA mess, Shohei Ohtani is great. I mean, make no mistake about that. And by the time he's finished, we may be talking about Babe Ruth number 2. I think most of us grew up with the idea that nobody had ever seen anything like Babe Ruth. He certainly put the home run record out of reach, it appeared, for a long, long time. I mean, when he hit, I think it was 60 home runs, the previous record, now I guess he hit 50 himself before, but he basically had more than doubled the previous season total for home runs once he became a full-time outfielder rather than when he was a pitcher with the Red Sox and only batting every 4th day. But I don't know. Shohei Ohtani, who continues to pitch and effectively as a pitcher and as a leadoff hitter and as a base stealer, which Ruth never was. Of course, Ruth played the outfield. Ohtani does not. But as a hitter, he's miraculous. And as a pitcher, he's great. And you put the two of them together, you might come up with better than Ruth. But this is a number that I see as a great number, understand that. But having grown up watching the Capital Punisher, Frank Howard, Hondo, blast home runs, and if you're too young to remember seeing him play, you may remember going to the massive outfield at RFK Stadium and seeing those white seats painted in center field where he would blast home runs. It had to be 500 feet from home plate. I mean, it was just miraculous how big his home runs were. And he swung a bat which was probably 38 ounces when most guys are swinging 32. He's a massive man and massive power. So if they had StatCast during his time, and he was out of baseball, I think 72 or 73, so gone for more than 50 years and passed away a couple of years ago. But according to StatCast, the home run that Shohei Ohtani hit last night to lead off the game against the Reds was measured at 117.7 miles an hour, making it the hardest homer off a 100-mile-an-hour pitch during the StatCast era. So now they have a way of measuring this. I don't think even if they dug up some film or something that they could look at and break it down, that you would have something like that for Frank Howard. But I got to believe he hit it almost as hard or maybe harder. I mean, so I take these numbers with a grain of salt. But, yes, Shohei Ohtani is unbelievable. Dodgers won the game 10-5, and love to see, as the Cubs won yesterday too, would love to see a National League Championship Series between the Cubs and the Dodgers, two iconic teams, and really wouldn't matter which team got to the World Series. The Red Sox get the jump on the Yankees last night, and good for the Detroit Tigers, who continued to win and win in the postseason. So we'll see what happens as the series move on. I like the idea that they have home field for all three. I think that's important. Bob Costas was on yesterday on our morning show, has some other ideas as to how to fix the postseason, and we'll get to that shortly. But I don't know if you've been following this really war that's going on in the WNBA, that there is, and this is going to be a sexist term, but there is seemingly like catfighting. And Kathy Engelbert, who is the commissioner and reportedly on her way out, Tom Friend is reporting in Sports Business Journal that she is likely to exit the league as commissioner once they ratify a new collective bargaining agreement, which may or may not happen in the off season. There's some real bad blood going on here, but according to what Tom Friend has here, he says sources say that Engelbert's presumed departure 6 years after arriving from the firm Deloitte is a relationship-driven thing tied to the way she has dealt with colleagues and players amid unprecedented growth in the league. Like, she hasn't handled this very well, and what you're going to hear here from one of the players, Napisha Collier, kind of backs that up. She was handed this year, or last year, it was actually last year, the Larry Bird and Magic Johnson that grew the league exponentially in the late 70s and the early 80s. She had that. She had Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese from their two matchups, not one like Bird and Magic, but two matchups in the NCAA tournament in the Final Four both years, and she's botched it. She's really botched it. And so this was Napisha Collier, the Minnesota Lynx. She's a representative with the Players Association, vice president, finished runner-up in the MVP voting. She's an excellent player. And as Minnesota was eliminated by Las Vegas, this was her, and she had written this out too. This wasn't off the cuff. This was her decree about what she perceives to be going on in the WNBA.
I want to be clear, this conversation is not about winning or losing. It's about something much bigger. The real threat to our league isn't money, it isn't ratings, or even missed calls, or even physical play. It's the lack of accountability from the league office. Since I've been in the league, you've heard the constant concerns about officiating, and it has now reached levels of inconsistency that plague our sport and undermine the integrity in which it operates. Whether the league cares about the health of the players is one thing, but to also not care about the product we put on the floor is truly self-sabotage. Year after year, the only thing that remains consistent is the lack of accountability from our leaders. At Unrivaled this past February, I sat across from Kathy and asked how she planned to address the officiating issues in our league. Her response was, well, only the losers complain about the refs. I also asked how she planned to fix the fact that players like Caitlin, Angel, and Paige, who are clearly driving massive revenue for the league, are making so little for their first 4 years. Her response was, Caitlin should be grateful she makes $16 million off the court, because without the platform that the WNBA gives her, she wouldn't make anything. And in that same conversation, she told me players should be on their knees thanking their lucky stars for the media rights deal that I got them. That's a mentality driving our league from the top. We go to battle every day to protect a shield that doesn't value us. This year alone, I've gotten calls, texts, and well wishes from so many players across the league. Those moments remind me that sometimes there are things bigger than the results than this game we play. But do you know who I haven't heard from? Kathy. Not one call, not one text. Instead, the only outreach has come from her number 2 telling my agent that she doesn't believe physical play is contributing to injuries. That is infuriating. And it's the perfect example of the tone-deaf, dismissive approach that our leaders always seem to take. I'm not concerned about a fine. I'm concerned about the future of our sport. At some point, everyone deserves to hear the truth from someone who I hope has earned the benefit of the doubt to fight for what is right and fair for our athletes and our fans. We have the best players in the world. We have the best fans in the world. But right now, we have the worst leadership in the world. If I didn't know exactly what the job entailed, maybe I wouldn't feel this way. But unfortunately for them, I do. We serve a league that has shown they think championship coaches and Hall of Fame players are dispensable, and that's fine. It's professional sports. But I will not stand quietly by and allow different standards to be applied at the league level.
That's scoped down. It's a 4.5-minute statement, which you just heard scoped down to 2.5 minutes. She went off on the league, and in particular, Kathy Engelbert. She's backed by her union. They put out a statement. She's the vice president, and the statement reads, Napisha Collier is an outstanding leader and officer of this union. When McPhee speaks, people listen. We are confident that her words today speak to the feelings and experiences of many, if not most or all of our members. The leaders of the league, its teams, would benefit from listening to her powerful statement. The players know their value, even if the league does not. They are fighting for their legacy and the future of basketball. And a number of players put out supporting tweets for her, including Elena Deladon, who led the Mystics to the championship 6 years ago. And she posted, it's the care for the human part for me. I'm not sure if Kathy knows I'm retired. Heard from everyone but her. So they're all piling on Kathy Engelbert. And again, Tom Friend of Sports Business Journal reporting that she's on her way out. Tony and Mike taking a swing at this last night on PTI. I agree with much of what they said.
They were inflammatory. Now, I'm not saying they're not true. I'm saying they're inflammatory. She blasted the WNBA commissioner, Kathy Engelbert. She blasted the officiating. She blasted the entire structure of management in the entire league. And by the way, she's a vice president of the Players Association. She also revealed details of a private conversation she had with Engelbert in which she quoted Engelbert as saying of Caitlin Clark, she had to get down on her knees and thank this league for the platform it gave her to make all this money outside of her salary. Mike, I'm not big on private conversations being quoted, but are you kidding me? Caitlin Clark in college drew more people in the gym and on television than ever happened in the WNBA. So that's just a dumb statement. And I would say that Napisha Collier, at this point, this is another quote. She said, we have great players, we have great fans, quote, we have the worst leadership in the world. So that's inflammatory, if not incendiary.
Tony, it's also repetitive, and that's my word. Because we've heard all year there's been this complaining. I mean direct hits. But too often for my taste, it's directed at leadership. Who are you talking about? Say what you mean and mean what you say is something my favorite English teacher, Jim Wall, taught me in high school. Say what you mean what you say. Are you ripping the commissioner? If you had a private conversation with the commissioner, you had other conversations and you can rip the commissioner by name. So do it. Sure. And by the way, I'm a huge Napisha Collier fan. I hate the way she got injured in that game the other night. It was a clean strip. It was not a foul. And she and her coach set the tone by just going crazy. And so and earning a suspension, earning it. And so all of this heat is directed at leadership. Say what you mean. Mean what you say.
Okay. Do you think they will arrive at a CBA? Do you think that league will start on time next year?
I tell you what, Tony, if you're serious, if so many players hate the officiating, hate the leadership, then there needs to be, you got to come to a head with this dispute, right? So I'm thinking, wow, do the two sides have the guts to sit it out and prove their points? I don't know.
I don't think so. And I think that they're going to cut off their nose to spite their face. And this isn't like baseball shutting down, or even the NBA has had lockouts. Hockey recovered from a full year of first a lockout and then no settlement. WNBA, it's got an audience, but generally sports fans can live without it. And by the way, Kathy Engelbert put out a statement saying that she's disheartened by the way that Napisha Collier characterized their conversation about Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. I would hope so, because if she said that, she's really dumb. Tony's 100% right. They brought their fame and fortune into the WNBA. Certainly their fame. And the money that Caitlin Clark makes off the court, and she reportedly has a shoe deal close to like $30 million, that's from Iowa. And it's a lot like what Bird and Magic did when they came into the NBA with the help of a very savvy commissioner. She does not appear to be as savvy as David Stern was, 45 years ago. So I think I look at what Tom Friend is reporting, that she's on her way out, and say, yes, that's perfectly understandable. And maybe that removes an impediment, because clearly the players hate her. It's not just Napisha Collier. This is a sentiment that's shared by the players. I don't know if they'll get who they want, but right now, Kathy Engelbert, who's been there for 6 years, has clearly not gotten their trust and confidence. And I did see an interview with, as a matter of fact, I did see an interview about a year ago with Kathy Engelbert, and she did, kind of moonwalk away from the idea that Caitlin Clark was the league. She's the league. She's to the WNBA what Tiger Woods was to golf. When she's playing, people watch. Now, the ratings were up overall this year, and even with her missing most of the season with an injury, they still did pretty well. But when she plays, it's a whole different story. And for Kathy Engelbert, if she said that they ought to thank their lucky stars that they've got a platform like the WNBA to make all this money off the court, yeah, that's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. Coming up, Maryland's record coming off buys under Mike Locksley, not good. He hopes to get it fixed this week against Washington. We'll hear what he has to say about it next. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
50 years ago today, one of the most significant fights in boxing, and for that matter, one of the most significant events in sports. I don't think I'm overstating that. You probably can't imagine that if you don't understand what boxing was like, particularly with Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier in the 1970s. But this was amazing, and it was a brutal, brutal fight. And I'll read you some incredible things that were written about it by Dave Kindred in a book that came out 20 years ago. It's a great book if you haven't read it, Sound and Fury. It's about the intersection of Muhammad Ali and Howard Cosell, but in the book he goes into great detail about the fight, and I'm going to read you a couple of paragraphs from it coming up. Meantime, Maryland is going to be home this week after a big win on the road 2 weeks ago against Wisconsin, and they are 4-0. And they are underdogs at home against a Washington team, which got blown out at home last week by Ohio State. One of the factors may be that Maryland, under Mike Locksley, has not been good coming off of a bye. How bad has it been? This was an exchange yesterday, Gene Wong of the Washington Post and Mike Locksley at his news conference.
Have you kind of re-examined the way you guys handle bye weeks, given that the results haven't been...
Man, Dustin told me that. Dustin, what is our bye week record? Dustin literally said it.
0-9.
0-9.
Yes.
I ain't been here 9 years, have I?
9 times.
Oh,
no, nine games.
Was that funny? No. So, no, I mean, we evaluate everything we do, Gene. That's a great question. Dustin literally just said, you'll probably get asked that. And I said, well, what is my record after buys? Because, we usually practice how we have to. And I grew up in an era where the bye week is used kind of like a prize fighter. When in between rounds, he sits on the stool. His eyes are looking across at his opponent. He's getting instruction from his coaches. He's getting recovery from his coaches. He's getting a little rest. But we did things a little bit differently. We actually, because of our depth, we didn't beat them up. I have a tendency during bye weeks to be really, really physical because that's what I grew up in under the Nick Saban approach where you're young players, you be real physical. We just can't afford to do that. So we condensed our practice opportunity time, but we still were physical. We still had shells and thudded and did some good things, but really looked at it as an opportunity to get some guys healthy while also focusing on things we haven't done well. And what I've learned about this young team is that most of the time when we've emphasized something to them, they've come back and done pretty well at it. So we wanted to find what are some of the small, detailed things of the fundamentals of the game that we needed to improve upon for each player and then gear it toward that. We did a lot more individual. I think we had 30-minute individual period because of us wanting to get better with the fundamental part of it of a young team.
That's Mike Locksley yesterday. The 0-9 off the bye they've had in the last 2 years since the Big Ten went to 18. They have 2 byes per season, so that's why you get the 0-9. But, you're generally coming off a bye not to play Towson, but you're playing a Big Ten team, even though it's hard to get your head around the idea that Washington is in the Big Ten. But they are, and they are 6.5-point favorites against a Maryland team which has played really, really well. And looks like Locksley hit the jackpot on Malik Washington, a true freshman who has been spectacular through his 4 games. And they have really, done things defensively that have made this possible. Of course, the first 3 opponents are non-conference, and they should have been walkovers. Though Northern Illinois gave them a game. Northern Illinois was interested in shortening the game, and that was a close game. But the other 2 were blowouts, and then they dominated the game at Wisconsin and did it mainly through their defense. They've allowed the fewest points, 43 through 4 games since 2013, and they're leading the country in sacks per game, 4, ranked second in interceptions in 8. And they changed the coordinators this year. Pep Hamilton is the offensive coordinator, and Ted Monchicino is the defensive coordinator. He's worked in the NFL. In fact, both of them have worked in the NFL before, and the results have been very good. Despite that, there are some flaws, and there have been quite a few drop passes by the receivers, which Locksley addressed yesterday.
I went back and watched every single drop we've had during the bye week, and, it's a simple fundamental called looking it in to the tuck. If you ever want to study it and if you want to fix drops, see how many times the ball hits their hands and their eyes go to make a play as opposed to looking it all the way in. And those are things that can be fixed. We studied it. We're working on it. You'll hear me screaming, eyes to the tuck. I've had to deal with these before. Good teams don't beat themselves, and we've cut all the other self-inflicted wounds out. You haven't said, hey, man, 2 games with no turnovers. Old Sam comes with the drops, boy. But so I'm working on those drops for you, Sam, and I'll try to get that fixed this week. For sure.
Sam is a reporter, obviously needling, or Locksley needling him, vice versa. Last thing is including Malik Washington, the freshman, and they've had some big contributors on defense as well. Locksley's been in and out of the program for a long time.
I've been around here, 17 years. So I've seen a lot of freshmen come in and play. I've seen the DJ Moores, the Stephon Diggs, the Yannick Ngakwe's, Sean Merrimans, the Vernon Davises. These guys are in that same world, and we've recruited really well. We've evaluated really well during my tenure here, and we'll continue to do that. And so, as I said, to our team, like a lot of people don't know or didn't know the type of talent that we've put together because 64 of the guys are new. There's a lot more questions than there were answers. But I can just tell you, we are nowhere close to being what I think we can be. But I really like this team, and I like their hearts.
Well, really looking forward to the next 2 weeks in College Park. Both 3:30 games this weekend against Washington. They are 6.5-point underdogs, and then Nebraska comes in the weekend after that, and that is also going to be a 3:30 game. This is fun. There's another Curry on the Golden State Warriors. And at least throughout his career, though it's been well-traveled, Seth Curry, not Steph Curry, but Seth Curry, the younger brother, has been able to say, well, at least I'm the best Curry on the team. Can't say that anymore. He signed a one-year deal with the Warriors, and they have actually played together in the past. No, I guess they haven't. No, this would be the first time. But he's 35 years old, averaged 6.5 points, 2 rebounds, 1 assist during the season last year. 11 years in the league. He's not the three-point shooter that his brother is. He attempts only 4 a game, shot 43%. But he's been with 9 different teams, a couple of them a couple times. Went undrafted in 2023 coming out of Duke. Originally signed a non-guaranteed deal with the Warriors, but was waived after playing 6 preseason games. So he's bounced around, and we got a brother combination back in the NBA, which we have had before. The Lopez brothers have played together. The Antetokounmpo brothers have played together in Milwaukee. Marcus and Markieff Morris, they played together in college at Kansas, as did the Lopez brothers, who played together at Stanford. Dominique and Gerald Wilkins. I think Gerald is significantly younger. He played with the Knicks for a while, but the two of them also played together. Mo and Franz Wagner. One of them played for the Wizards a few years ago. Pau and Mark Gasol. The twins, Tom and Dick Van Arsdale. They both played the same number of years. One of them passed away recently. They had played together at Indiana, where they were great players, and teamed up together one last year and then both retired. The Ball brothers, Lonzo and Melo, have played together. Horace and Harvey Grant. Harvey played most of his career with the Bullets, but he and Horace hooked up later on. And 3 of the Barry brothers played together. John, Brent, and Drew. There was another one who played at Kansas, won a national title there, played overseas. George Gervin had a younger brother named Derek Gervin. They teamed up briefly with the Spurs. And then the Collins brothers, Jason and Jaron Collins. Of course, Jason was the first professional athlete to come out and say that he was openly gay and playing still in the NBA. Real trailblazer there. There have been nearly 100 sets of brothers who have played baseball together. Hank and Tommy Aaron. Everybody, of course, remembers Hank Aaron, spent his career with the Braves, but Tommy was with him 62, 63, 65, 68, and 71, kind of back and forth in the minors. I don't know if he played for another organization. He was one of those guys who was sort of up and down. Dick and Hank Allen played together with the White Sox 72 and 73. Dick Allen is the Hall of Famer, but Hank Allen played for the Washington Senators for a while. Remember watching him play when I was growing up. The 3 Alou brothers played for the Giants in the same outfield together late in the season, 1963. And then Jesus moved along, but Philippe and Matty played together with both the Giants and the Yankees. And then Jesus and Matty played together again with the Giants in 64 and 65. Everybody remembers George Brett with the Kansas City Royals. He had a brother, Ken Brett, who was a pitcher. They were playing together in 1980 and 81. Jose and Ozzie Canseco. Ozzie had like a cup of coffee in baseball, but he was with the Athletics for a while in 1990 with Jose. Billy and Tony Canigliaro with the Red Sox. I remember that very well. 69 and 70, they played together. Famously back in the 30s, 2 pitchers, Dizzy and Paul Dean with the Cardinals. The Gwynn brothers, Tony Gwynn, played forever for the Padres. His brother Chris was with him in 1996. The Larkin brothers, Barry was the better player, but Steven was with him with the Reds in 1998. Pedro and Ramon Martinez, 2 teams, Dodgers and Red Sox in the 90s. And the Necro brothers, Joe and Phil with the Braves, 73 and 74, and they teamed up again in 1985 with the Yankees, which I believe is where Phil won his 300th game. The Russell brothers, remember the fat pitcher, Rick Russell, had a brother named Paul. They played together with the Cubs. The Ripken brothers, of course, Cal and Billy, they had 2 runs together, 87 to 92, and then Billy came back to the Orioles in 1996 when Cal was still playing. And Steve Sachs had a brother, Dave Sachs, I guess had a cup of coffee with the Dodgers in the 80s. And Joe Torre, more famous, I guess, as a manager, but his brother Frank was a great player, won a World Series championship with the Milwaukee Braves. Joe came along a little bit later, but they were able to play together in the 1960 season. So you got 2 Curry brothers, Steph and his brother now teaming up with the Golden State Warriors. Steph and Seth, now brother teammates, as we've had in the past, both in basketball and baseball. I guess there have been some in football as well, but didn't bother to look those up. Coming up in the next hour, Bob Costas on how to fix the baseball playoffs. It's the Andy Poland Show, ESPN 630. Paul Taboni, the ball is in your court. He is the new president of baseball operations for the Washington Nationals, named this morning. The question is, what kind of resources is he going to have to work with? He's got some young players on the roster for sure, but you got to spend some cash. Now, spending isn't everything. Ask the New York Mets about that. But you got to spend something. And they have spent virtually nothing since signing Steven Strasburg to what turned out to be a disastrous $245 million contract. So we'll see. He's 35 years old. He's an analytics guy, and he comes from the Boston Red Sox, who opened up the playoffs last night with a win over the Yankees. So let's hope. But this was one of the tweets I saw. I've not listened to the news conference. It was going on live when I was doing the last hour. But Mark Lerner, the owner, was asked about spending. And he said, quote, "We want to get back to where we used to be in the past, but that question doesn't need to be answered right now." Okay, maybe it doesn't have to be answered in detail, but, what kind of resources is Paul Taboni going to have to work with? I really like Mike Rizzo. And Mike Rizzo, said when he was fired that he had to navigate that ownership for 20 years. And yes, the old man spent some money that he didn't actually know about, including, maybe the greatest signing that the Nationals ever had. It was the greatest signing, Max Scherzer, and giving Max Scherzer that deal. But that hasn't been the case in recent years. So we'll see. Paul Taboni, with all his analytics and everything else that goes along with his background, that's helpful, but you still have to spend some money. You don't have to spend $339 million or whatever the Mets spent on the payroll this year, including that deal that they gave Juan Soto, $756 million over 13 years or something like that. But, okay, we're off and running in the Taboni era, and I guess the next step is to hire a manager, and we'll see what they come up with on that. Speaking of baseball, Bob Costas, the grand poobah of baseball, he's left the MLB network, so he's not doing games anymore, but he is a go-to guy when you want to talk about baseball and seems to make himself available for the various talk shows. So he was on our morning show yesterday, Unsportsmanlike, and was presented by a young person's question to an old sage. And Costas loves baseball more than any other sport. He broadcasted for many, many years on NBC. He's long espoused his love for the sport. So he's hit with this. What's better about baseball today than back in the day?
Back in the day, you could say it's availability. If you're really immersed in it, you have access to more of it than ever before, including in the phone that you hold in the palm of your hand. Now, some people might say that diminishes some of the romance that distance brings with it. When the baseball game of the week was really the game of the week, and people looked forward to that, or seeing the World Series meant something different, and you had to sneak out of work or school, that's not going to help the ratings exactly, but maybe it led to more anecdotes about how you felt about the game. But I think, all things considered, you'd rather have all of it. If you're an avid baseball fan, you'd rather have every game at your fingertips if you wanted. So that's one thing. And I don't know about back in the day, but back in more recent history, it's much better now with the pitch clock and with other changes that they've made to restore baseball to what it should be. It's a pleasing, leisurely pace rather than its plodding, lethargic pace, which it had only a few years ago.
100%. I have yet to hear even the old school baseball people say, it was much better before they had this pitch clock. No, they had to have the pitch clock. Pitch clock, I don't want to say it's saved the game, but it's made it much more consumable. So I agree with Costas 100% on that. Question number 2 to Bob Costas. The New York Mets spent wildly sitting home watching everybody else in the playoffs.
Well, if I were a Met fan And there are plenty of them. I'm speaking to you from New York. I'm surrounded by them, and I hear from them on a constant basis, as well as Yankee fans. If I were a Met fan, I wouldn't just be heartbroken or disappointed. I'd be infuriated to see a team perform this far beneath what its potential should be. They were not only a losing team over the second half of the season, they were flat and spiritless. So there's that. Just when you're talking about this season, there's that. We know that from recent history, the size of the payroll, especially in October, doesn't always guarantee success, but it should guarantee a trip to October when you spend more than any other team in the league, and there are 6 playoff spots. 6. More than a third of each league goes to the postseason. What's the deal here? You know, when you spend that much money, and then you look at a team in your own league like the Milwaukee Brewers, in the 30th market out of 30, consistently a contender in their division. Granted, the Central Division is not always as strong as the other divisions, but they had the best record in the entire league, so there's almost no excuse. Now, when you talk about the Yankees, even though the Mets have had their moments over the years, they're always going to be second. Like the White Sox are always going to be second to the Cubs in Chicago, and the Angels are always going to be second to the Dodgers. That's the way it goes. So there's going to be resentment from Met fans. They see themselves as the underdogs, and they revel in it anytime the Yankees do anything less than winning the World Series.
Far be it from me to argue with Bob Costas on that last point. I would just say from my experience living in New York, I was surprised at how big the Mets were. Now, I got there at a time when they were at the top. We started WFAN in July of 1987, which was the season after they had won the World Series, and the Yankees were pitiful then. They were terrible. So maybe that has something to do with it. But the fervor for the Mets is big. I think it's a lot different, like in the same city, the Brooklyn Nets are way, way, way down from the Knicks. Even when the Nets are good and the Knicks are bad, you can see that comparison there. Dodgers, Angels, same. I didn't sense that kind of separation that Costas talks about between the Mets and the Yankees. But that's just me. Last thing is how to fix the postseason. The way it works now with these 3-game series of the wild card before you get to the division winners, that this is not what he envisions is the fairest way to do it. So this is the Bob Costas plan for fixing the postseason in baseball.
Since you play 162 games, and baseball is different in so many ways from any other team sport, the regular season has to mean something, and you have to construct a postseason that has appropriate advantages and disadvantages based on regular season performance. And if you are a wild card, even if you're a good team, if you're a wild card, you've come in through the back door. Over 162, you didn't win your division. And the advantage of having 3 wild cards now in the postseason is that it not only keeps the teams that make it alive, it keeps multiple teams alive and their fan bases engaged. So that's, in modern baseball, that's an advantage. We saw it play out this year when there were a lot of teams still involved right down to the last weekend. But so that's really the advantage of having 3 wild cards. But once you get in on that basis and your fans are excited because you still got a shot, then you should be subjected to a roll of the dice that division winners should not. So here's what I would do. You take the second and third best wild cards, and you play a 1-game knockout on the home field of the better of the 2. The best wild card, which in many seasons is the second best team in the league. The Dodgers a few years ago won like 105 and finished a game back of the Giants, who won 106. So the top wild card is exempt from that first game. The winner of the first game goes to the home field of the top wild card. So the top wild card has to win 1 game to get into the division series. The other 2 would have to win 2 games, and for one of them, it would be 2 road games. And then the survivor of that goes into the division series. But I would not allow the survivor to play a team from its own division in the division series. They'd have to play the highest ranking of the others, because why would you want to play 162 and then in a blink of an eye you turn around and maybe play a team you finished 10 games in front of? The Dodgers finished 22 games ahead of the Padres a few years ago, played them immediately in the division series, and lost to them. Then the next year they beat the Diamondbacks by 16, got swept by them in the division series. I think you want to separate them as much as possible until you get to the LCS. And most important, the division series should be best of 7. Why should the only series that's guaranteed to include the third best division winner and a wild card be the one that is least legitimate? I mean, best of 5 is better than best of 3 or a single game knockout, but best of 7 tests the roster of a team and the depth of their pitching staff. It's just a more legitimate test. So you make the division series best of 7, just like the LCS and the World Series. Would that guarantee that the best teams always get to the World Series? Of course not. Would it make it impossible for a team that had a lesser regular season to get hot and make it through? Of course not. But it would weight it in a way that made the outcome more likely to comport with what the strength of the regular season revealed.
It's fascinating because basically how I'm taking this in is you're combining the frantic pace of the NCAA tournament with the way baseball used to be in terms of a 7-game series with 4 teams in each league.
Kind of, yeah. And you're acknowledging that in modern baseball you have to have more teams and their fan bases involved. But at the same time, you have to respect the meaning of the long season and what used to be called the pennant race.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine Russ Hodges? The Giants win the division. The Giants win the division. No. I mean, that's the 162. Now, that was a different kind of deal, too, in 1951 because you only had the 2 leagues. You had the American League and the National League. I believe there were 16 teams, 8 teams in each league. And only the regular season winner of each league would meet in the postseason. That was the World Series. In that particular year, 1951, the Giants and the Dodgers wound up tied. So rather than a 1-game playoff, which is what they do now in those kind of situations where it's down to the 2 teams, it was a 3-game series. And they split the first 2, and then, of course, the Giants won the pennant with the Bobby Thompson home run off of Ralph Branca in 1951 at the Polo Grounds. And that is sort of baseball lore. But the pennant race was a big thing. And back when I was first in New York in 1987, the Mets were defending champions, but they were in a tight battle for the division with the St. Louis Cardinals. They were in the same division in those days. And in those days, there were only 4 divisions, 2 in each league. And then it was 4 divisions. Excuse me, 4 divisions in each league. And so they only had 2 rounds of playoffs. You had the divisional round, and then you had the championship series between the two advancing teams from the division in both leagues. So the NLCS and the ALCS. But in order to get in, you had to win the division. There was no wild card. And there was a late season series between the Mets and the Cardinals, which drew as much attention as any Dallas-Washington game back in the day to decide who was going to win the division. And that was even when we had wild card. No wild card then. It was huge stuff, and we lose all that. So then we get to the postseason, and you got 14 teams. Oh, my God, this is tough to sort through. And Costas is right. Now, I would say this about our World Series that we had here in 2019. It was sort of the result of all of this. They wouldn't have gotten in with just, one league, of course. They didn't have the best record in the National League. And the other thing is, they're playing a 1-game wild card game with the Milwaukee Brewers. And the Milwaukee Brewers are ahead, and they got Josh Hader on the mound, who's the best closer in the business. And thanks to the Juan Soto double, drives in the winning runs. What turned out to be the winning runs wasn't a walk-off. And they survive and advance, like North Carolina State. And they did, and they had one series. What was it? They swept the Cardinals, I guess they swept the Cardinals, but they had a tight series, getting through. And then they get to the World Series, and it's 7 games. But the way baseball is set up now, Evan Cohen's right. It's got that kind of feel that the NCAA tournament has, which is a wildly popular event because of that. But you diminish, and this is Costas's point, you diminish the regular season. And if you spent any time covering baseball, as I did, particularly for bad teams like the Texas Rangers when I worked in Dallas, you understand the grind of the regular season. It's 162 games. You play almost every stinking day. And there should be a bigger reward for going through that gauntlet of games and emerging with a great record, other than, you get maybe a first-round bye, which hasn't proven to be that much of an advantage anyway, because you get rusty during that period of time. But there's a lot to be said for what Costas is offering there. And I don't know, where that goes, where his plan might land. I think people in baseball would be smart to listen to him. But we're not going back. We're not going back to just division winners playing. We're going to have wild cards. We're going to have multiple teams in the playoffs. That's where the money is. But it's especially this part of the baseball season. It's tough to get your head around this. And can you watch all these games? 3 games a day. Well, it's 4 games a day, right? 3 or 4 games a day. Crazy. At least we got day baseball. I'll give them that. At least we got day baseball, and I really enjoyed watching the end of the game that the Cubs won yesterday, and I really enjoyed the Red Sox and the Yankees. Just that was really great theater, and it was over by 9:30 at night, so that's good. All right, 50 years ago today, probably the fight of the century. Maybe you can argue that there were others, but in terms of brutality, in terms of will of men, Ali Frazier 3, the Thrilla in Manila. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Graham is coming up at 11 o'clock. 50 years ago today, the Thrilla in Manila, the third of 3 fights between Joe Frazier and Muhammad Ali, which took place over a 3.5-year period. It was an unbelievable period of time in America, and it was an unbelievable time for boxing. To go back on this, Muhammad Ali had set the world on fire, the whole sports world, in the 1960s. He had won a gold medal at the 60 Olympics, and in the early 60s, he emerged as an athlete had never been before. He was brash, he was loud, he was bragging, and he beat Sonny Liston, who seemed unbeatable. And there was a rematch, and he beat Sonny Liston again. And people went, whoa, he not only talks the talk, but he walks the walk. And it was a whole different way of perceiving athletes. And then he refused induction into the Army. He was elected. He famously said, no Viet Cong ever called me the N-word, except he actually used the N-word. And this was highly controversial. He was banned from boxing for 3 years. And then through a variety of court cases, he wound up, making his way back to the ring in 1970 when he fought Jerry Quarry. And that set up a matchup between undefeated heavyweight champions. Though Ali had been stripped of the title, Joe Frazier had won the title, which, many people felt still belonged to Muhammad Ali. And I've said this many times before. The biggest build-up to a sporting event that I can ever remember was Ali Frazier won, the fight of the century. They were going to split $5 million, which to me as a 12-year-old seemed like all the money in the world. Oh, my God. One of them's going to get $2.5 million. My God. And the money was actually put up by Jack Kent Cooke. Cooke was the one that came up with the cash to make that fight happen in Madison Square Garden, March 8th of 1971. And this was one of those cases where the actual event outran the hype. It was a classic, with Frazier delivering the left hook, which put Ali down on the canvas, which might have knocked out cold another man or certainly caused him to stay down. Ali got right back up. But Frazier won the fight on points, and to me, as a kid, that was unbelievable that Muhammad Ali lost. Things evolved over the years as Frazier fought very few times. Ali continued to fight, but did not have the heavyweight title. Frazier had it when he got in the ring against George Foreman January 22nd of 1973, which led to the famous Howard Cosell call, "Down goes Frazier, down goes Frazier, down goes Frazier." So Frazier loses the heavyweight championship to George Foreman, who was like the modern Sonny Liston. He seemed unbeatable. He was big. He had also won the gold medal at the 1968 Olympics. He was an awesome presence. And so now you have the second fight between Ali and Frazier, January 28th of 1974. This is the least of the three. It didn't get the attention. They weren't splitting $5 million. Each of them got $850,000 for this fight. And the winner would have a shot at Foreman. Many thought that, with Frazier, if Frazier won, he would get a chance to rematch against Foreman. Ali won the fight. And shockingly, he beats Foreman October 30th of 1974. That was the one with the rope-a-dope, and it was absolutely incredible by Muhammad Ali, which only added to his great legend. So that sets the stage now. Ali as the heavyweight champion of the world to fight Joe Frazier in the third of three fights on this day in 1975. And part of the reason it became known as the Thrilla in Manila, and this addresses how cruel Ali was in hyping the fight. He would, as he often did with fights, he'd come up with rhymes, and he would say, "A killer and a thriller and a chiller when I get that gorilla in Manila." That's cruelty, calling Joe Frazier a gorilla, a fellow African-American man at a time where there's racism in this country and throughout the world. And he would have this little toy gorilla that he would punch in the face and say, "This is what I'm going to do to Joe Frazier." But Ali was a master of hyping fights, of selling fights, and boy, did they sell this. It's estimated that this fight on this day in 1975 in Manila drew 1 billion viewers, including 100 million watching the fight on closed circuit. That's when they would show the fight like in a theater, and 500,000 pay-per-view buyers on HBO. Now, HBO was only 2 years old at the time. Almost nobody had cable television in 1975. They still got 500,000 viewers for that. That's unbelievable. The fight took place at 10 o'clock in the morning, local time. And the reason for that was for the worldwide television audience. That's why they felt like they could get the highest audience. So they had it at 10 o'clock in the morning. The problem was the arena where they had it had a tin roof on it. And it basically became like an oven in there. No air, they said. It was estimated that at times it reached over 100 degrees. Ali said he lost 5 pounds due to dehydration. But these two warriors fought like maybe no two fighters had ever fought in the ring, because they knew that this was going to be the legacy. This was the tie-breaking fight. The rubber match between the two of them, that Frazier had won the first one in 71, and Ali had won the rematch in 1974. And so now on this day in 75, this fight becomes what is an absolute classic. And I'm going to read to you from a book called Sound and Fury, which was written by the great Dave Kindred about 20 years ago, where he talks about the relationship between Howard Cosell and Muhammad Ali, but he goes into detail about this fight. I'm going to read you these few paragraphs because I think they're absolutely stunning. He writes, "The first 3 rounds, Ali set himself in ring center in the misguided hope that he could knock out Frazier early, as Foreman had done in Jamaica. But Ali was not Foreman, and this Frazier was not going down. Ali's heaviest punches stopped Frazier's advance for only a heartbeat or two, and in the 5th round, Ali heard an unfamiliar sound. From the crowd of about 25,000 people came the chant of 'Frazier, Frazier.' The man on the march had made the fight his. 'Lord, that man can punch,' Ali said on his stool. 6th round, 2 evil left hooks to Ali's head. Both were greater than the hook that had set Ali's tassels upside down 4 years earlier. That's the left hook at Madison Square Garden. But this time, Ali stayed up. Frazier relentless. Ali backing to the ropes, hearing Angelo Dundee, 'The center of the ring, the center of the ring.' Easier said than done when Joe Frazier is swinging sledgehammers at your hip joints. Through another 4 rounds, another 12 minutes, another lifetime, Ali was under siege, protected only by idiosyncratic right leads and the gyroscope whirling in his brain that somehow kept him standing upright. At the end of the 11th, Ali wanted no more. He didn't so much sit down in his corner stool as use it to interrupt his collapse. Angelo Dundee noticed his man's weakness and said, 'Muhammad, now we're going to separate the man from the boys.' He pulled Ali's trunks away from his waist and poured in ice water. 'You've got to suck it up.' And this is an incredible paragraph here. Anyone who saw that 12th round had to believe that no fighter had ever done what Ali did. He teetered on exhaustion. Frazier was always there. The tin-roofed arena was an oven under Manila's midday sun. Then from some dark and scary place, Ali borrowed against his future. He decided there was only one way to settle that, and it was with the arm's length trading punches. Through the 12th and into the 13th, Ali brought it all. Frazier had bled from the mouth most of the night, and now his face began to swell in those places where veins had crushed to bursting and blood was on the run and looked somewhere to go. He could not find a way out. The gathering, clotting, lumping blood pushed tissue towards Frazier's eye, and he soon looked through a slit. In the 13th, he didn't see the Ali right that ripped his mouthpiece out and sent it over the ropes into the ringside seats. His bloody saliva, a comet's tail. And finally came the 15th round, and Eddie Futch, the famed trainer, decided that Joe Frazier could not go out there and possibly survive. And as Tom Lavero writes in his column today, Futch was the architect of Frazier's first win over Ali, devising a strategy his fighter to crouch lower than normal to avoid Ali's right uppercut. And he directed Frazier's strategy in Manila that stunned the champion as Frazier dominated the fight, going through the 5 rounds of their 15-round bout so much that Futch believed that Ali was ready to quit. At the end of the 10th round, he thought Ali was ready to go, but then Ali got that second win, which we just heard about from Dave Kindred there. And finally, Futch felt like, okay, I've got to save this man from himself, and he threw in the towel at the end of the 14th round. Ali said about this fight, it's the closest he felt to death. As was the custom back in the day, after the fight was shown, Wide World of Sports the following Saturday, Muhammad Ali would go on with Howard Cosell on ABC, and this is how their conversation began a week after the fight 50 years ago.
Some of us in the States were a little surprised when you suggested over there in Manila that you might knock Joe Frazier out in the very first round. Do you recollect?
Well, yes, this is psychological warfare on your opponent. Like George Foreman, I told him I'm going to dance. I didn't dance. Frazier, I told him I'm going to dance, and I didn't dance, if you notice. Stayed there, took his shots, used my power.
All right, we're going to take a look in slow motion in that first round when you actually staggered him.
My intention was to win whenever I could, but I didn't really believe it would end in the first round, but I did tag him in the first round.
Yeah, he tagged him, but the fight went on, and they went through the tape of the fight with Ali doing something that he rarely did.
I have to say Joe Frazier, I want to say here on air, is the greatest fight I've ever fought, and he's not a scientific boxer, but he would have to go down in history as one of the greatest heavyweight champions of all times. They might not recognize him, but I'm saying it because I know I could have beaten all the heavyweights in the past, and I don't think none of them would have gave me no more trouble than Frazier. At ringside, I can see Donald King, the great promoter, sitting there. He was looking real worried. I think he had his money on Frazier.
How do you rate this fight of all the fights you've fought, and in particular against the first Frazier fight?
With the first Frazier fight and the Foreman fight, I rank this as the best. Foreman, I didn't throw too many punches. I just let him do the work. Look, these are left-right combinations that have really done the last-minute damage. That left and the right is the worst punch to get hit with, is what they call the 1-2 punch. And
can you feel the strength ebbing out of him?
You can feel it when you land. You can feel the pressure. There's another left-right. Right now, I'm feeling real good now. I know there's no doubt now I'm going to win it because of these clear shots. I really believe he's going to go. And this is why I'm pressing him like I am. But I'm just call up promoter Donald King, and we're now working on some more fights. And it might be a fourth Frazier fight. We never can tell.
And so it ended, champ. Finally, 2 quick questions. The right lead, so effective against Frazier. The reason you're able to throw it now effectively is that the old calcium deposits that used to hurt you are gone.
I used to have to get Novocaine shots before fights to kill the pain. Now, for some miracle, God's blessed me, my hands don't hurt no more. And this is why I'm punching so hard.
Okay, last question. You told me 3.5 weeks ago, one more fight, that you'd had you full of it. One big fight, a lot of money, and that was it. Now there are more fights in the offing. Why?
Well, because I've changed my mind. I feel that I can go another few years. The fans want to see it. Things in business I'm trying to do internationally, and being active champion, I can do more business and other things, and I just want to stay active so I can have more power doing things I'm doing on the side.
Thank you very much, champ. Thank you for being with us. We enjoyed it as always. And that, in effect, is our show today. Ali, still the heavyweight champion of the world. Knock it off.
Knock it off, meaning stop playing with my toupee, which is what Muhammad Ali was doing. Sadly, Ali went on to fight 7 more years, including Trevor Berbick, and that probably contributed to his Parkinson's syndrome, and he died in 2016. But what an incredible night 50 years ago today, the Thrilla in Manila. Bram is up next. I'll see you back here on Monday morning at 9 a.m.